Quite a few people have asked me to show what playing with my Chessnut Air using my custom pieces is like. I hope you enjoy. So I decide to, of course, lead with e4 with the white pieces, and my opponent plays a Scandinavian. Now against a Scandinavian, of course, take the pawn. I expect the queen to capture back, and so I was a bit surprised when they played the knight. This is the modern variation, and I think it's actually okay to give up the pawn. However, I sort of noticed my opponent's in the 1200s, so I thought, let's try to hang on to the pawn. So I ended up playing bishop to c4. What are you going to do? So captures, capture back, queen capture, and then of course knight to c3. One of the interesting things and quite fun things when you're playing completely out of theory is that, you know, it's a bit imaginative, really. Now, I think that was actually a bad move by black, and in fact, the knight out is not a good move either, because with the bishop out, the queen can actually capture the pawn on g2, which I think was their best move. Here, I think I was thinking I probably should just develop. You know, I was thinking potentially of bringing the queen out, which I think might actually be the best move, but pushing the d-pawn can't be too wrong. And, you know, the queen in that position is potentially liable to being attacked by my knight as well, though I didn't quite see how I could make that work. Black, you know, thought for quite a bit of time, obviously out of their sort of expectation and theory as well. Well, they led with the unusual opening. I can't say I've really seen the modern variation of the Scandinavian very often at all. Now here, you know, there's all sorts of tricky things. So I was thinking of sort of queen e2, because, you know, of course that pins the pawn, but then, you know, their queen immediately can capture my pawn. So I was thinking, do I just immediately exchange pawns? But, you know, then, you know, queen captures queen. Either I have to bring the knight back, king could capture, but then I lose the right to castle. What's the right move? Often in these openings where center pawns are traded early, things get, you know, get a little bit complicated, because you can have unexpected or maybe even surprise tactics down the center files, you know, before pieces have developed and before either side has really had a chance to castle their king, moving the king to safety. And I eventually developed the other knight. My logic is if they push the e-pawn, I can just capture. But this way now I double defend my d-pawn on d4. Developing the knight was a good idea, because ready to castle Kingside, they capture. That was within expectation. Capture back with the knight. And as you can see with that move, one of the things with the Chessnut Pro is you don't have to take the pieces sequentially. If it's a captures, you can just move the pieces to the final square. I developed knight c6, good move. I was thinking maybe I could just, trade knights, or do I defend the knight with developing the bishop? And then I saw queen e2, which I mentioned before, immediately with check. Also taking, control of that now fully open e-file. Better me than the opponent. I suspected black would probably block the check with their bishop. Probably the king's bishop, dark square bishop. Bishop e7 seems to make sense. Yeah, and that's what they played. I was pretty sure at the beginning that knight captures knight, I was going to do that, but I was just seeing whether or not there are any sort of clever tactics. Because potentially, the queen's looking down the d-file, but not attacking anything yet. He eventually decided I'll just take. Now, a potential tactic there was to, move one of the knights, or move that knight to attack the queen. But I thought, nah, let's just do it that way. The queen, of course, now, attacks my pawn on g2. So I had to think what I wanted to do. Here I decided, let's trade queens. Now they have to do something because their queen is pinned to their king. I was hoping that if they just took queen takes queen on, what's that? That's b5. I could capture back with the knight, and then a knight would have an attack on the c7 pawn, which of course at the moment comes with an absolute fork of the king and rook. That's what I hoped I would see, but I think my opponents have calculated that that wasn't good for them. I thought, look, let's trade queens anyway. Yeah, captures. Their bishop is still staring at my pawn on g2. But I thought, that's okay. Thought about, castling kingside, but, the queen sort of with the bishop, staring at that pawn. Might be better to castle the other side, castle long. But I do need to defend the pawn on g2. So f3 obviously makes a lot of sense, and that's what I played, but I was trying to calculate to see, was there something better? No, I couldn't see anything in particular. At this point, I was thinking castle long is probably better, but it depended on what black was going to do. I had a sense that I was not better here, that black might have gained an advantage, but even if they did, I didn't think it was going to be too far, one way or the other. So they castle short, and this really made me want to castle long, because then I would throw my kingside pawns in a pawn storm. course, develop bishop. Now with an attack on c7, getting ready for long castle as well. I thought here that black was probably going to play, maybe be forced to defend that pawn on c7 with one of their rooks, which I thought would be good for me, puts one of their rooks in a very passive position. But with black thinking over this long period of time, there we go, they actually found a pretty good move, I thought. A potential discovered attack on my king the next turn. So I thought, look, long castles, have to get the king out of the center. And my bishop is still staring at c7, so felt very likely they were going to have to move. Maybe their a8 rook. Though potentially I thought maybe they would opt to trade bishops by playing bishop to d5. Oh, sorry, bishop to d6. No, decided to defend the pawn with the rook, which is good because that rook now is very passive. And it's not so easy for black to, move the rook out of the guard of that pawn. It'll be a few steps in doing that. They'll have to move their bishop. And so, let's push the h-pawn. Black tries to pawn storm myself. I thought that was not really a problem. Definitely don't want to move my pawns in front of my king. That weakens the defense. And at some point I was going to have to rotate that knight towards the enemy king anyway, so moving it towards the king side. So, definitely there's an opportunity to move it regardless. And knight to e4 kind of makes sense. I think I would be happy to trade my knight for their light square bishop. Get rid of their bishop pair. The bishop pair is quite strong. At this point, I didn't really see exactly where my attack lay, other than trying to get all my, pieces onto the king side, attack the opponent's king. Good opportunity. I've got, 3 pawns. I can be marched forward. The knight, potentially the rooks as well. Obviously, I've got the rook, supporting the h-pawn. Happy days. Really want to get my h-pawn up another square because that starts to constrain what black can do, particularly with their g-pawn. somewhat complicated position in the middle game, not surprising. A bit of thinking for both myself and my opponent. I've recently been playing 15-minute games. Oh, there we go. And opponent decides to take, challenge the E file and nope, push a pawn. Really wanted my pawn there. And one of the things, of course, is that it's often not good to be the person to take first, because after captures, whoever goes second ends up controlling the file. So I would much prefer black to take my rook. It allows me to capture back. So basically I effectively gain a turn and end up controlling the file. Yeah, so currently playing 15-minute with 15-minute and 10-second increment rapid games, trying to sort of move out of the 30-minute rapid space, play some different pool of players. 15-minute games with a 10-second increment, it feels pretty good actually. Slightly faster than 30 minutes. At the same time, the 10-second increment should avoid really terrible time scrambles, and I'd notice most of my 30-minute games finishes long before 30 minutes is up anyway. So they opt to trade the bishop for the knight. I kind of wanted that. I do get an isolated pawn, and now they trade rooks. And you can see, did you see that? So one of the things with the Chessnut Pro is that, you don't have to take the pieces sequentially, as long as the final position, if it's captures, is the correct pieces on the correct squares, the game continues. It was about this part of the video where, as I was recording, I realised I probably should have put all my captured pieces on. I have a box actually beside me on the floor. Just makes for a little bit of better recording. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? H6. But now rook to the 7th rank. And so my bishop and rook are both looking at the pawn. Rook, of course, has a fork of the bishop and the pawn on c7. Expected they would probably bring their bishop back. There we go. And this, of course, constrains the movement of both the rook and the bishop, the two remaining pieces. Though I have to admit I wasn't entirely sure the best way to take advantage of that. So E pawn marches forward, so now I've got, two pawns which are quite advanced. I suspected here that black might try to force a bishop trade. And I thought, look, potentially that's okay. It is a forced trade because the dark square bishop on G5 effectively pins my bishop to the king. So the trade is, yep, there we go. Trade is necessary, but black ends up with double G pawns. And I thought ultimately that's potentially okay for me. I thought for a while, just wondering whether or not I should maybe just advance my G pawn to G3, captures that way. But the problem with that is potentially black can push their G pawn, forcing a trade, and then they end up with a passed outside pawn, past H pawn. And I decided that that's probably not good. Yeah, so trade, have to capture back with the H pawn, and now they've got double G pawns. and now push forward my g-pawn, and pretty much black's advance of their pawns on the king side is halted. Yep, so king tried to come to attack, that makes sense. Probably need to advance my king. Just made sure that, you know, there was no better move. Yep, king to d2. The king moves over. I thought that was going to happen. And here I sort of had the choice of either pulling the rook back, but I saw this move. E6. Now, I was pretty sure this was a bluff, and when I sort of analysed it afterwards, it was. I think we're equal here, or maybe black slightly better, and I lose some advantage. And basically, that's because black can counter-attack, I think, my rook. They can play rook to rook to d8, and my rook is then pinned to my king, so we have to trade rooks. But they took with their pawn, which now allows me to capture that pawn. They give a check, but I'm completely winning here now. I was really happy with that transformation. Again, just making sure what would be an okay move. Do I move back to the C file, or do I move to the E file? I thought that was probably fine. And basically, black has a problem because my rook there's actually a bit of a triple fork. So obviously, I'm forking the two pawns, the pawn on the G file and also the pawn on the C file, on C7. But the third fork is actually rook G8. And that basically skewers the king against the rook. So I can force the rook trade, the king captures back the rook, and then they can't stop my H pawn from promoting. So passed outside pawns are often very, very powerful. So here I knew I was pretty much winning. Black thinks a while. Pretty much what black has to do, I think, is to give up. They have to accept giving up the pawn, but they can't let themselves. Lose their rook via skewer. Yeah, and that's a mistake. There we go. Rook G8, skewer. Makes no difference really. King can either stay on the E file or the D file. There we go. Captures. They have to capture back. And they now can't stop the H pawn promoting. Completely winning. Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. There we go. Promote to queen, and basically that's how you promote on a chestnut board. Now here, because I've got plenty of time, I really think through each move, try to make sure I don't stuff something up, hang my queen or something stupid like that. One of the things that stops yourself from making an error, try to get a check every turn. Obviously the king wants to move forward, but I should be able to, with the queen maneuver so that I capture some of their pieces as well. There we go. King forced away from their g-pawn captures, and with another check. Of course, now my g-pawn is also a pass pawn. And now with sort of their pawns on A to C files and also on the E file, it's not so simple. So here, obviously, I've now locked off that part of the board. That g-pawn potentially is promoting, assuming I don't find a way to mate. Black before that, that's fine. Push the pawn, check. They can move forward. Now, with those sort of 3 pawns and a king in a line like that, I do need to be careful that I don't get bullied by pawns. Check, move forward. It's fine. Check. Maybe they don't want to lose more material, they have to snuggle against their pawns, really. Here, I thought about just pushing the G pawn, but I didn't like, the fact that they could potentially give me check with their B pawn advancing to B4. No need to rush the thinking. There we go. Blocks that off. They can capture if they want. I capture back. Happy days, really. Yep, they push forward. Not sure that was the best move for them. Regardless, that basically just locks those 2 files. Perfectly good for me. Let's advance the G pawn. No, king can't move forward any further. If they try to push their E pawn, well, they can't at the moment. It's pinned. It's lost. Here we go. I was thought about capturing, but no. Let's keep that side locked. So A3. So either they completely lock it up or captures. So captures. No movement there now. It's all over. Yeah, black plays on from this position. Not a good sport, Many players would just choose to resign. I probably would just resign. But it's actually good to play on, Yep, second queen. Now it's just ladder mate. I actually hadn't quite conceptualized I was going to ladder mate, but that would have been just a simple approach. And that's why I'm taking a bit of time here. It's one of these lapses. By the way, I'm wearing some of my merch. That's the Black Knight watch. You can get it from my merch store. King to the back rank, and basically remove that queen. Yep, there we go. Good game. GG.